Good afternoon, everybody. Mic's working, right? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kavita Vankre. I'm with Indian Institute for Human Settlements. Welcome back to the post-launch session. I work with the practice team at IHS, and I'm also the associate dean of School of Systems and Infrastructure. My own work is around. I've been working on sanitation and water for many years, but my broader area of work is around urban services. So I'm very happy to be moderating this session. When we talk just a little bit about urban services before I open up to the presenters, when we talk of services, I think the point that we like to make out here is that it is key to livability of a city. So whether I'm getting water at home, whether I have to clear the waste outside my house, or the road is blocked outside my house, or whether I get transportation, all of these are core question of urban services. Many of the axes of inclusion and exclusion in cities are around these fundamental services, whether who's getting access to them, who's getting access to what kind of services. So we really need to think of it. As we begin to talk about resilience, there's a lot of literature, growing literature around resilient infrastructure, right? Closer? Yeah, okay. There's a lot of talk of resilient infrastructure, which is important because you don't want infrastructure to fail, but not enough conversation about what does resilient means in terms of services, because there's no point in having the infrastructure if the end point is not met, which is service for urban citizens. So that's my pitch for importance of resilience in urban services. We have four very interesting papers across different quote unquote sectors. We have one on mobility, two on waste, and one actually very interestingly on resilience to fire. There are four presenters. I apologize to the presenters if I mispronounce your name. What we've done is simply no particular order, just we'll have one online presentation and one in person. So we'll start with Anish. Anish Munglur is from University of California, Berkeley. He's doing a presentation on transportation justice in face of just transition. I'll hand over to him. The format will be one speaker and then questions to them. So 12 minutes speaker and then around 3 to 4 minutes of questions. So please do try and stick to your time. And over to you, Anish.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anish. I am a city and transportation planner. I graduate. What I'm presenting is from my master's thesis, the research that I did. At the crux of what I'm trying to say today is this: the nature of Bengaluru's precarious slum economy makes motorbikes and two-wheelers the most convenient transportation option for slum residents. So this creates this complex planning challenges, which raises critical question on how planners can and should think about just transition, where in a context where personal mobility becomes very vital for economic survival. Just a brief overview in terms of methodology. I'm not going to spend much time here. Essentially, I was trying to understand what is the overall political economy of our slums in Bangalore, what is the trajectory of urban growth, and then try to quantify and understand what is the transit accessibility for people residing in these slums. Again, these were corroborated by two field visits that I did, which are my case study slums, where I spoke to residents from Indira Gandhi slum and MV Garden second stage. My presentation has three components. Part one is to understand what is the economy of slums and what is the nature of livelihood in these economies. Second one is to understand the role of transportation for accessing livelihood. Third one is getting to the crux of the presentation, which is what do you mean by just transition and how can we ensure that in transportation. Um, the Bengaluru's economics trajectory can be divided into four phases. I think we were a textile and liquor dominated city pre-independence, post-independence. Due to public investment, we saw a lot of defense, aerospace, and electronics public sector companies who faced around in 1980s swift competition from private enterprises due to the initial phases of liberalization. But after the official liberalization in 91, we saw this transformation to a cosmopolitan cosmopolitan city that we live, which we call the IT hub and the tech hub of India. And this had a very important spatial implication for our cities as planners. What does that mean? When we see our public sector companies, they were designed as townships, which we get to see in BEML and many other public sector companies. They were enclaves. And we see that parallel again post-liberalization when we look at IT tech parks where we see gated communities around. But beneath this tech hub reputation and corporate success glamour, we see this underlying economies of slum economies that which often get neglected constantly, where many skilled workers reside and live. They're either self-employed, they have small-scale enterprises, there are carpenters, there are laundry services that we see, and what I want to now view these slums as these productive spaces in our cities, not through a narrow lens of dwellers, not through a narrow lens of housing problem, but as thriving working class neighborhoods. Just to deep dive into the slums that I visited and I worked with, the first one is Indira Gandhi slum. This community has around 300 households. It is right next to NGV, National Games Village, and you can see the interlinkages, which I tried to sort of bring it up in the previous slides. And one thing that I noticed in these slums is also the climate vulnerability, right? They're next to a stormwater drain. Even when I visited in December 2024, there was a lot of rains and the community was flooded. Similarly, with MV Garden second stage, Indira Gandhi slum is in East Bangalore. This is in Alsur, central Bangalore. It has very close linkages again to the corporate enclaves close to it, many service, and it is predominantly laundry and carpenters who reside in this community. We look at these slums in the housing lens, forgetting that there are many productive spaces. There are workers, as you can see. This is a snapshot of Indira Gandhi slum. There is an appliance repair shop and a scrap shop in the MV Garden community. But yet, they operate in a very precarious economy. Why? One is they lack social protection. They work in a cash-based economy. They have multiple jobs. And they have no access to any financial services because they don't own the land. And this, coupled with the constant threat of eviction, makes them really precarious. So a resident living in these communities, how do they access their livelihood? What role does transportation play? And this is what I try to explore in the second part. One is to understand the extent to which transit helps and enables them to access livelihood services. The second is to identify what mode of transportation do they prefer and use given these challenges. I do this through three things, and I want to preface that before I get into the actual slides. I do close facility analysis, which is a spatial analysis to quantify what is the walking distance to the closest metro station or a bus stop. Second one is to identify service area analysis. How many bus stops are around a 200 meter, 500 meter, and 1 kilometer of a walking distance from a slum? Third one is kernel density analysis to see in the different density zones of metro and bus stops, how many slums are within these density zones, essentially to quantify transit accessibility. Let's start with BMTC, Bangalore Metropolitan Transportation Corporation, which has around 6,000 buses as fleet size, which is the primary mode of transport for many people living in the city. The average walking distance for a slum resident for the entire city is 0.4 kilometers. Sometimes it reaches up to 1.2 kilometers. 60% of the slums have bus stops within a walking distance of 200 meters, 96% within 1 kilometers. Only 13% of slums are in low density zones, right? But this scenario is this is in contrast to the metro, the big metro, World Bank funded, almost $1 billion infrastructure that we have in the city, where the average walking distance is 2.9 kilometers, sometimes reaching up to 10 kilometers for a slum. Only 5% of the slums are within a 1 kilometer walking distance, and 3% within 500. 58% of these slums are in low density zones. So the summary of what I'm trying to tell is buses are the preferred mode of choice for slum residents. Yes. but there are challenges there. They are not reliable because they wait up to minimum of 20 minutes for buses, so it's a long commute. The hub and spoke model that we see in transit right now in BMTC, where they have to get to either the central zone, which is Majestic, etc., and then get to their destination, which creates a big trip chaining in transportation, as we call it, is a huge challenge. And the other challenge is also bus stops, especially for women, where lack of amenities becomes a big challenge. And that's a picture of an actual bus stop, which does not exist near Indira Gandhi slum. So Metro does not cater to slum residents. It caters to IT and tech and employees from higher class and higher castes in the society, and not slum residents. So given this complexity, I asked, what is your preferred mode? And how do you navigate this precarity of the economy that you have? And the fundamental answer that came is we love motorbikes, and two-wheelers are essential for us for 4 reasons. One is speed, because buses often take time. Second one is affordability. Third one is reliability, which is very critical when you operate in a precarious economy, when you have multiple jobs. Fourth one is, very interestingly, maneuverability also. I'm going to bring an example of one of the slum residents that I interviewed, who lives in MB Garden, who has a provision store that you saw. They work in the provision store during the day, and at night they work at Kidwai Hospital, which is around 5.2 kilometers from Indira Gandhi slum. If they take a bus, it takes up to 1 hour 20 minutes, interestingly, because they either have to go to Shivaji Nagar or Majestic and then take the bus back to Kidwai, or they rely on motorbikes. And during the day, because they have a provision store which provides the only provision store for the community, which provides only milk, bread, and eggs, they have to go to Majestic or some other stores where the market rate is lower to get access of these provisions and come and sell in their community. So motorbikes becomes essential. Buses are not an option. So what I'm trying to tell is that there is an interconnection between the nature and the kind of jobs that these people have and commute patterns. And they have an agency and have a conscious choice to make, and they take loans, in fact, to buy motorbikes just to live a life. But motorbikes are a big challenge in the city. Let's not forget that 75% of our mode share are motorbikes, and they have huge externalities. I'll bring up the safety bit first because that's huge. It's estimated 43% of all road fatalities involve two-wheelers up until 2017, and there are different numbers. In fact, it goes up to 60%. Emissions are also high. Transportation is one of the leading emitters in the city. So when we think of just transition, transportation plays a huge role. It's important that we move to a sustainable transportation mode, but there's a nuance here. What we see is commercial vehicles are only 3.3%. They contribute the most in terms of PM load emissions, right? So I just keep that thought in mind, because a lot of talk that we see is about mode shift, right? That we want people to walk and use public transport, but that narrative does not work with the slum residents who have no personal mobility at all. There are households without motorbikes. It's important that we look at just transition from a lens of economy as well, which is crucial to be able to live a healthy life, to have a stable livelihood, where personal mobility becomes essential. So when we look at just transportation, second and third is quite obvious in the transportation world, maybe not for the deputy chief minister or any governance people in the city, that multimodal transportation is essential. Walking is essential. Transit and buses especially are very crucial. But there are households with no access to private vehicles, and we really need to think of them and place them in this framework of just transition and provide them motorbikes. And that's what I advocate for, because that is crucial for them to live a stable livelihood. If we have to think of congestion and prioritize modal shift, let's focus at those high and middle income households who possess multiple mobility options, who own multiple cars and in fact multiple two-wheelers, which is, if you're from Bangalore, that's kind of a norm now. And focus on those households to reduce personal vehicle ownership, but make sure the households in slums have access to personal vehicles. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And you did very well on time. Thank you for that. So we have adequate time for questions. I invite questions. Yes, I see two hands, but let me also 1 minute check online I don't see. Yeah, so somebody's going to hand over the mic. Yeah, you have the mic. Okay, then. And then sir, and then you. Okay, cool.
What about the walking? Like why I'm adding this is because most of the slums are developed near their industrial area so that they could walk and go. Walking is one of the major modes of transport. Why? I mean, like, can you dwell on that?
Absolutely.
We'll collect 2, 3 so that you can respond together. There.
Uh, you talked about the use of motorbikes in particular. I'm sorry. Uh, I wondered how much of a difference there is between the use of two-wheelers by men and women. And I'm particularly talking about those who live in slums rather than college students and the like, or people who work in IT.
Yeah.
Sorry, this question could be a bit more specific, but when you talk about metro, one is that when you even consider metro in the cities like Delhi or Hyderabad, the affordability comes up because the fares are not like they're quite high for someone who's actually working on daily wages to afford to commute via metro. That's even if it's accessible in a sense, like if it's closer to their residential areas, even if it's like Delhi has a lot bigger network, it's around 396 kilometers square, but it's still not accessible. So affordability comes into play. So like what kind of model would you suggest that metro opts for?
Okay, so answer those 3 and then we'll take another round.
Yeah, for sure. The first question was about walkability. Yes, that is the second most used walking mode. It is important to build footpath, and I address that detail in my report. But let's look at livelihood in the sense that when they have to go to electronic city to get a plumbing job, and where they get referred, and then the second job, they don't know where the next job is referred somewhere in Maleshwara. So they have to go all the way in throughout the city. So, and that's why I say mobility, not transportation. And in that context, two-wheelers play a role based on their livelihood, but walkability is equally important. The next question is about gender. Thank you for that question, and I try to address this through the questionnaire, although I didn't really focus this on my thesis. But women definitely use more scooters, as they call it. They love that, but again, they're very dependent, unfortunately. What I noticed is, again, I'll bring anecdotes because that's important to understand the reality. Is the very person that I spoke to drops his wife in the evening, picks up because she's a household help. So they are also dependent on that kind of mobility, but more women walk than two-wheelers, for sure. So most women in Indira Gandhi slum as well as MV Garden walk. They do laundry services. In MV Garden, they all walk. They hardly take. They only take buses during festivals when they have to go to far-off places. That's the primary mode of transport. In terms of affordability and accessibility, thank you, Daniel. And something that we need to think is slum, when there are a lot of tools that informal workers take along when they travel. And that came up throughout the interviews, right? So when they have a lot of tools, Metro does not let them in. It's almost entering like an airport. I take this very personally because you're not letting the resident of your city travel and access. That is an accessibility challenge. Why do we have those security checks? I do not understand. So they cannot carry these tools. So it ends up being inaccessible. Affordability is even not a question there, right? It's definitely not affordable. And free transit for women does not apply to metro. That's the other component.
Thanks for that. So I'm going to now shift online the 3 questions there, and yeah, that'll be it for this paper. So Narmada Khare, she's asking any possibility of improving walking paths. Okay, that's the first question. Then you have a question from Meera Mahadevan. Thanks for the presentation. What do you think are the challenges in bringing modal shift only in households that possess multiple mobility options? And then Nishka Kumar asks, is share auto or other vehicles also a common practice? And where do you see paratransit in just good question. So yeah, all
Yeah,
you.
I'll address the paratransit first. Yes, share auto is, there are many drivers who reside in these communities. In fact, that's a community vehicle. That's what I've noticed. And I write about this in my thesis as a chapter in itself. Um, The second one is just linking this to modal shift, right? There is challenges, of course. We are being more car brained like America, unfortunately. We think that's the easiest way out. And that will pose a significant challenge, especially when it is looked, the taxes come from automobile sales and private vehicle sales. So with GST and all that, that's playing out in India, state government thinks that's a revenue source. So it's definitely a challenge. And in terms of walkability, 100%. Part of my job after I graduated was building footpaths. So I think we should definitely do that. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Could we have a round of applause, Manish? Thank you so much for that presentation. We'll move on to the second one. We are going to go across to Bangladesh. We have Noore Jannat Nitu and Rukhsar Sultana from BRAC Bangladesh. So I'm assuming they're practitioners. The paper is also very practice oriented. The title of the paper is Transitioning to Plastic-Free Water Bodies, Case of Plastic Pollution in Cox's Bazar. So over to both of you for the presentation. And again, just a reminder, you have 12 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, so I'm Noor Jannat Netu. So I'm working as a development worker in BRAC Bangladesh right now. The study I am or the paper I'm presenting today is actually reflect some of our findings, our learnings from one of our ongoing project. That means BRAC Bangladesh actually running in Cox's Bazar right now. So when we started this initiative, we identified that a significant research and data gaps in this area. So the lack of existing knowledge motivated us to dive deeper and conduct this research, document our findings to contribute to the broader conversation on sustainable urban planning and water body conservation. So actually, my goal is not just to share my or our findings and experience today, since we also want to seek your guidance and insight, because you are the industry specialist here, you are the urban expert. So your expertise in urban settlement and planning, your suggestion will be very much invaluable in making our project more inclusive, impactful, and effective. So, I mean, all of us know that plastic pollution has become a very pervasive problem globally, with urban and coastal environments facing the brunt of the impact. In cities, the global south, particularly in rapidly urbanizing coastal regions, the effects of plastic waste on marine ecosystems are very much profound. And Bangladesh coastal city, Cox's Bazar, is actually exemplifies this challenge. And this region is not only a home to the local residents, but also a huge number of displaced Rohingya communities, as all of us maybe know about the Rohingya refugee influx of 2017. So for this reason, actually around 124 tons of daily waste, of which a significant percentage is actually plastic, is polluting the water bodies and impacting the biodiversity and posing serious health risk to humans through microplastic contamination. So plastic waste, especially LDP, that means low density polyethylene, actually very much widespread in Cox's Bazar and often enters the waterways of the cities, and all these are leading to the ocean pollution, obviously. And beaches alone actually receive 34.5 tons of plastic every day. And this plastic debris is not just like harm the marine life only. It actually breaks down into microplastic and enters the food chain of human. So these are actually affecting both the marine organism and humans also. So given this situation, so we found that it's a critical need for focused research to propose solutions that align with the urban sustainability and environmental justice principle. So the study is actually intended to explore how this urban waste management and with a focus on specifically 3R. I mean, we are proposing to adopt 3R, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle approach. So which can address the plastic pollution in coastal and marine environment, while actually ensuring that equitable outcomes are ensured for all the stakeholders. So obviously our objective was to just quantifying the plastic waste generation so that we can analyze how the waste actually pollutes the water bodies and contributes to marine plastic microplastic contamination actually, and we wanted to identify some impacts of plastic pollution on marine ecosystem, including the biodiversity loss and on human health, focusing on microplastic infiltration into the food chain. We also wanted to evaluate the current waste management practices of Cox's Bazar and assess their effectiveness actually in reducing the plastic waste, with particular focus on the challenges and bottlenecks faced by households, local businesses, informal recyclers, scrap dealers, bhangariwala in Hindi, kachrewala. So to propose, we also wanted to propose a solution, which is actually a comprehensive waste management process. That means 3R approach. So which will be very much tailored to the context. That means very much tailored to the socio-economic and environmental realities of Cox's Bazar, which will emphasize on inclusivity, sustainability, and scalability. So this is our methodology. We adopted a mixed method approach. We collected primary data while doing FGDs, KIIs, and other community consultations. We actually collected data only in the intervention area of our project. That means 4 wards in the Cox's Bazar municipality and 3 Rohingya camps. So I have actually divided our findings in 2 parts. One is to assess the scale of the pollution, and another is how this scale of pollution is actually affecting the environment or different sectors. So in the scale of pollution, we have found that household waste in Cox's Bazar actually contains an average of 12.46% plastic waste, of which actually 10.35% is LDPE plastic. On the other hand, as all of us know, that Cox's Bazar is famous for tourism, so there is a number of hotels there. So hotel waste actually contains 13% plastic waste and 9.5% are LDPE there. On the contrary, in Rohingya camps, the plastic waste is actually slightly lower, which is 7.5%, but obviously it still represents a significant environmental hazard. As for waste generation rate, we have found that households generate between 1.5 to 2.88 kg of waste every day. So actually it depends on income levels. So our study actually found an interesting thing, that is low income household actually contribute the highest proportion of plastic waste at approximately 14% of total waste, and while the middle and high income households actually contribute 11% and 12.5% approximately. So as for the recycling industry or infrastructure, we have found, I mean, when we are actually interviewing our different stakeholders, our recycling shops or scrap dealers, we have found that most of actually are being operated without formal safety measures, license, sufficient knowledge about the waste management rules, or maybe policies, laws, anything. So actually there is a bit, when we actually interviewing the scrap dealers, we have found that there is a general willingness among the scrap dealers to expand operations, and they actually want to adopt more environment friendly practices, highlighting the need for formalization and capacity building interventions. On the other hand, the Rohingya camps actually exhibited better awareness of waste generation and recycling processes. As for bottlenecks of the system, we have found that the waste collection infrastructure in Cox's Bazar is actually not sufficient to cope with the growing waste volumes. Many waste collection vehicles operate beyond their capacity, leading to incomplete or irregular waste collection. So a lack of formalized waste generation waste segregation practices at the household level further actually compounds the issue. So all this actually compounds the issues because the mixed waste actually very much difficult to recycle. So that leads more plastic being dumped into the landfill or maybe water bodies of the city. As for the impact of that scale of pollution, we have found that in marine biodiversity or ecosystem, actually beaches in Cox's Bazar are heavily polluted with high density tourist areas actually accumulating up to 168 gram per meter square of plastic waste, while low density areas actually accumulate around 16 gram per meter square. So as I have already said, that around 34.5 tons of plastic waste actually deposited on the beaches every day. So these actually contributes to the contamination of marine ecosystem more and more. As for the human health and because of microplastic, we have found that the infiltration of microplastic into the local food chain actually being where was I? Okay, that's true. So actually, this is being a huge growing concern right now. And when we are doing the interviews with our different health expert or maybe policymaker of the local government and residents, we have found that this is actually rising the public health risk. So this actually includes respiratory and gastrointestinal issues, which actually caused by the microplastic contamination. As for tourism industry, we have found that the tourist industry in Cox's Bazar actually significant contributes to plastic pollution, because tourists actually are demonstrating low adherence to waste disposal guideline. A gap in infrastructure for segregated waste disposal in tourist areas has led to unchecked disposal of single-use plastics in water bodies. So while the tourists actually exhibit more awareness to environmental issues, they actually mostly lack knowledge of local waste management regulations and exacerbating the pollution in local coastal zones or coastal cities. So to deal with these solution problems, we are proposing a comprehensive waste management strategy, which is actually 3R approach. So how can we ensure that? We are proposing actually several ways. One is obviously in focusing on infrastructure. So we can ensure like door-to-door waste collection system for segregated waste, and we can upgrade the waste collection vehicles to ensure that they can actually handle the increasing amount of waste of the city. And no change is sustainable if the public or general people are not involved in the system. So we should focus on public awareness, campaigns focusing on tourist residents, businesses to promote the 3R approach and educate the dangers of plastic pollution also. And we should collaborate with the community level people. That means we can collaborate with local schools, educational institution, community people. As for recycling sector, we can provide training, we can provide financial incentive if needed for formal or informal recyclers, waste collectors, waste segregators, and we can promote investment in building more MRF. That means material recovery facilities to increase the recycling capacity of the city, recycling capacity of waste, particularly for LDPE plastic, as I have already said, this is actually most prevalent. So we can set up different examples also. We can set up different plastic-free zones with strict enforcement of bans on plastic, single-use plastic, and maybe we can implement some fines and penalties for businesses that actually fail to comply with waste disposal regulation. So yeah, we must admit that the transition to plastic-free water bodies in Cox's Bazar are actually very much complex thing. But obviously, it's an urgent endeavor that actually require multi-stakeholder collaboration and sustainable waste management solution. So the application of the 3R model, reduce, reuse, recycle, offers a pathway toward mitigating the adverse effects of plastic pollution on marine ecosystem and human health. So this transition must have to be equitable, in which can ensure that vulnerable population, such as informal recycler, refugees, obviously, informal waste worker, all are integrated into the solution. So only by addressing both the environmental and socio-economic dimensions of the plastic waste crisis, Cox's Bazar can serve as a model for urban transitions to in waste management in other rapidly urbanizing coastal cities also. So yeah, that's all from me, but I just want to conclude saying that my study actually underscore the urgency of addressing plastic pollution through innovative, inclusive, and data-driven approach. So we believe that 3R model actually can combine with
Hi, Noor, can you
robust.
wrap up, please, now? Because you've already.
Just okay, just
Yeah.
15 seconds. So the 3R model actually can combine with the robust stakeholder collaboration, and if that can be possible, only then that will ensure the sustainable future for all of us. So thank you for your attention, and maybe I have taken a lot of time. So yeah, I welcome your questions, insight, or if you have any kind of suggestion to improve our project, please.
Thanks a lot for that. Okay, so questions. I see a hand there. And I'm just going to open the online thing also.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting to hear about waste in Bangladesh because we did a very, very small scale of study in Bangalore about waste management. And some of the issues that we found, like one of the big reasons for accumulation of waste in one place was that people were not segregating it enough. So this kind of made it illegible to the system to understand what to do with it, and like, you know, what do we do with the waste that we don't know how to handle? That was one issue. Another issue was that the urban local body did not sort of have enough capacity to process the waste, which was being generated. So I was just thinking, like, I don't know, either that's something for you to think about with further, or is there any way in which these issues speak to what you also saw during your research?
Okay, Noor, I'm going to collect a few questions and then you can answer a couple of them. So there are a few online, so I'll read them out and then you can answer three of them together. Okay, there's also, okay, very interesting. There's a request to introduce people in the room. So yeah, going forward, we'll do that. Sorry about that. So there's a question from Sharon saying, would bringing in circular economy, would it be a solution to reducing plastic usage in the area? And there's a question from Kranti on, was a knowledge attitude practice survey done in Cox's Bazar? What are your thoughts on factors beyond awareness that will encourage reduction of plastic usage and improper disposal? Okay, no, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So maybe the first question was like waste segregation. So as for to ensure that waste are segregated at source segregation, that means like household level. So right now we are actually doing one thing that is we call it NAS based intervention, which is actually for behavioral change. And so apart from different kind of campaign activities, we are conducting different context-based researches on the behavior patterns or practices or waste practices of the community, of the households, and obviously the local markets also. So we are doing that, and we are promoting we are trying to find out what nudges are the most impactful right now for that specific type of people or community. And we are planning to scale up that, and I can add like maybe we can ensure that different we can provide different household level bins which are actually have different compartment for different type of waste. You know, in middle class or maybe in lower class, people actually dump their waste in a single bin. So we are promoting promoting the household level bin which have different compartment for different type of waste. As for local government capacity, so we are actually collaborating with the local government. That means the municipal government or city corporation government. So that we are actually collaborating with them. We are trying to capacitate them also. And as for if there is any kind of collaboration, I mean, we are as I have already said in one of my slides that community led change is obviously important. We all of us know that. So as for community led change, we are trying to build a hub or forum or a group which will we are calling it collaboration hub. So in that collaboration hub, different kinds of stakeholder of the waste management system of the city are actually involved. So we are trying to make develop different action plans for the for that specific city, not for whole Bangladesh, for only Cox's Bazar, and we are trying to implement that one. So we believe that will actually increase the local government capacity. As for one question was about circular economy, so obviously we actually agreed that, and that's why we are proposing 3R. So a part of 3R actually recycle. So recycle, promote the circular economy. So obviously we agree that circular economy or 3R approach can ensure a better waste management service. As for beyond awareness campaign activities, yeah, I have already said that beyond awareness activities, we are actually doing different kind of context-based research, different kind of context-based intervention, maybe like incentives, maybe like livelihood support, maybe like providing training. So yeah, it will take time, but we believe that if we can do this like for like 4 or 5 years, maybe we can ensure that Cox's Bazar has a better waste management system, so that we can develop Cox's Bazar as a model for all coastal city, not only for Bangladesh, but also for other Asian cities which will be coastal. So because waste obviously very much a huge challenge for the urban planner, for the urban planners for any kind of urban city, but it makes more vulnerable when it involves the marine biodiversity also. So coastal city, I mean, Cox's Bazar need different consideration, and we are actually considering all the things. So maybe I'm clear.
Thanks, Noor, for that. Okay, oh, a round of applause, and then we can move on. Okay, so the next presenter is sitting besides me. He is Rahul Raj from University of Sheffield. The title of his paper is Urban Environmentalism and the Changing Geographies of Waste in Patna. So you will see a very different perspective on waste from the paper presented. So over to you, Rahul.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rahul from the University of Sheffield. Today, drawing on my PhD project, I will present my paper, Urban Environmentalism and the Changing Geographies of Waste in Patna. Indian cities are transitioning towards more modernist, techno-managerial, and capital-intensive approaches to understanding and managing urban ecologies under national flagship programs such as the Clean India Mission and the Smart Cities Mission. While these transitions are deemed crucial for achieving sustainable development, they often depoliticize urban environmentalism by reducing complex socio-ecological issues to mere technological fixes. These transitions at times become violent and exclusionary in both its imagination and practice, and render the questions, claims, and contestations of the urban laboring poor and the deeply embedded socio-ecological inequities and injustices invisible. Patna is undergoing one such transition. Its objective is to modernize solid waste management systems by eliminating manual handling of municipal solid waste and scientifically managing it. In 2018, Patna launched the door-to-door waste collection fleet. This fleet of thousands of workers employed and outsourced by the municipality collects the waste from the source and brings it to the transfer stations where dry waste is recycled at material recovery facilities and wet waste is sent to compost pits. The discards are then transported to the designated landfill in Baria and dumped, otherwise scientifically treated in biomethanation and waste to energy plants. While these infrastructures are not fully in place, Patna's aim remains to rank higher in the Swachh Survections, which are the national cleanliness surveys over the years, and make Patna clean and green under its Chaka Chak Patna campaign. While these transitions have helped Patna improve its ranking, the municipality has failed to integrate, as the 2016 solid waste management rules mandate, and improve the working conditions of thousands of municipal and independent waste workers working on very precarious arrangements. To critically and carefully examine these transitions as responses to the normative imaginations of the urban and their implications on the identities, social relations, and subjectivities of waste workers, which is my broader PhD project, I situate my research in the heterodox field of urban political ecology. Rather than fixating on the traditional neoliberal gaze, the formal-informal binaries, and the rush to declare who wins and who loses from these urban infrastructural transitions, I aim to examine these transitions from a more situated, embodied, and relational perspective, following feminist approaches to embodied urban political ecology, drawing on the work of Doshi, Truelove, Sultana, Ranganathan, and others like Simone, Graham, and McFarlane, and Fredericks, who understand infrastructures as peopled, lived, and embodied. I engage with the lived realities of people, places, and practices to examine how these in-transition microgeographies are embodied, contested, and navigated in everyday lives. For this paper, I'm specifically interested in how the changing geographies of waste are shaping the socio-spatial practices of waste workers at transfer stations. For my ethnographic study, I use transfer stations as analytic sites. The two transfer stations I focus on are Gardani Bagh and Pani Tanki. The ethnographic study, which was part of my PhD project, lasted from January to September 2024. I employed qualitative methods such as participant observations and a range of formal, informal, and group interviews with independent and municipal waste workers, in addition to other key informants. These three key findings have emerged from my preliminary analysis. The first is re-specialization of waste work, in which I discuss how waste work practices have changed post-formalization of waste management in Patna. The second one talks about conditional access and temporal reclaiming of waste, in which I discuss how different workers groups have resisted conditional access to waste and working sites. The third one talks about the reproduction of casted ecologies, in which I share the casted subjectivities of Dalits and non-Dalits in relation to waste work. Before the formalization of solid waste management in Patna, there were several small and big dumping grounds within administrative circles, in addition to the community bins. These dumping grounds and community bins acted as quasi-commons for the independent waste workers to access waste. Post-formalization, the smaller dumping grounds and the community bins have been eradicated, and the bigger dumping grounds have been appropriated, enclosed, and made into transfer stations, which are now owned, controlled, and monitored by the municipality or a contracted agency. While waste workers earlier had agency over their working time, place, and frequency of work, they are now subject to new spatio-temporal arrangements. Waste workers are now forced to work at a fixed place at a fixed time under the surveillance of CCTV cameras, municipal supervisors, and security guards. These have led to the emergence of distinct gendered subjectivities as well. Women waste workers prefer working at a fixed time at a fixed place, which makes them feel relatively safer and less tired. It also provides them with relational autonomy to manage both productive and reproductive work. They use transfer stations for both productive work and also as intimate spaces where caring, eating, playing, feeding, breastfeeding, and raising children take place. Men, on the other hand, find these arrangements constraining their autonomy in their lives and movements within the city. These transfer stations and their components, such as the recycling centers and compost pits, when fully operational to materialize the waste to wealth agenda, will selectively employ a handful of workers on very exploitative labor relations, as documented in other places, including Patna, while dispossessing their majority and pushing them to precarious margins. At the Gardani Bagh transfer station, which had the only fully operational material recovery facility, or the recycling center, waste workers were first asked and then threatened to sell their recyclable materials to the contracted agency operating the facility, instead of selling them to the local scrap shops. Their access to the transfer station was made conditional on that. The non-local waste workers sold their materials to the agency, but the agency did not pay them a fair price, and the payments were usually delayed. The local waste workers who lived near the transfer station in a casted ghetto called Musahari did not sell their materials to the agency. Asserting their casted identities, their adjacent residential location, their numerical strength, and the uninterrupted historical dependence on waste and waste dumping grounds, the Musahar workers fought to reclaim their right to access the transfer station and the waste dumped there. Responding to this conditional access, waste workers at the Pani Tanki transfer station leveraged their strong relationship with the scrap shop owners and their mutual interdependence as a strategy to counter that. The workers negotiated with the agency by saying that the scrap shops depend on the waste workers for their livelihoods, and that they would sell half of their materials to the scrap shops and the rest to the agency. The delayed payment and unfair price issue was similar. And after months of doing that, they eventually started selling all their materials to the scrap shops. Although the waste workers and scrap shop owners share a patron-client relationship, as evident from several narratives from the interviews, these situated networks hold together not only waste infrastructures in place and facilitate waste metabolisms effectively and efficiently, but also take care of the social fabrics at the city of the at the margins. These scrap dealers are mostly Muslims and other backward caste, and the interface provides a limited but useful avenue for cross-class and cross-caste solidarity, which is subject to violent appropriations from the new liberal and new feudal relations seeping into the microgeographies of their everyday lives. Through these narratives of contestations and solidarity building also come narratives of ownership and claims making of waste and waste work by the Musahar community in Patna, who have historically engaged in waste work. While several new communities have entered waste work, Musahars believe that it is their work. This is what the rule says. This is what their parents and grandparents did. And this is what they have seen growing up. They are born and raised around and on garbage dumps, and they start working from a very young age. They do not consider waste work as dirty. They seem to own waste work and are worried about other caste workers coming to waste work. This worry, however, is also situated and relational. They are relatively less concerned with upper caste workers coming to waste work, as it shows how caste boundaries have been blurred by the fascinating income opportunities and sustenance that waste work provides. However, a closer examination of the hierarchies within the waste work would argue otherwise. The Musahars are more worried about the non-Musahar Dalit communities coming to waste work, and they reproduce the same casted hierarchies to which they have been subjected for generations, if not centuries. Musahars, as one of the most stigmatized and marginalized groups in Bihar, separate themselves from domes and mehtars and place them and their work of cleaning toilets and sewers hierarchically below theirs. They also have strong animosity towards the helpers who work on the door-to-door fleet of the municipal waste collection system, as they are mostly Dalits coming from Dom, Paswan, Chamar, and other Dalit subcaste. They complain that these helpers usually recycle the dry and valuable materials and sell them before the vehicles even enter the transfer stations, dumping the mixed, less valuable and dirty waste for the Musahar workers to work with. Nevertheless, the coming of more workers to work at transfer stations has led to fierce competition among the workers to claim the waste for sustaining their lives and livelihoods. The envisioned plans of the municipality, fueled by the neoliberal logic of accumulation and the normative imaginations of the urban bourgeoisie, have exposed waste workers in Patna to the possibility of violent dispossessions, as seen in other Indian cities. Navigating these precarious times and spaces, waste workers continue to use this precarious temporality of waste infrastructures itself to their advantage till they are pushed to precarious margins. Drawing on the changing waste geographies in Patna, this paper indicates how urban infrastructural transitions are envisioned and materialized, and how we can better understand and study them, especially in the smaller cities of the global south, which remain epistemically marginalized in mainstream urban scholarship. It argues how urban transitions are inherently social, political, temporal, and relational processes. The situated networks of identities, social relations, and emerging intersectional subjectivities need to be studied more critically and carefully to examine urban transitions and the subsequent reproduction of uneven, unjust, uncertain, and unfree urban ecologies. These uneven embodiments, contestations, and navigations of urban infrastructural transitions and their situated and relational understandings, foregrounded in the everyday lived realities, open new avenues for theorizing diverse urbanisms of and from the global south, which are socio-spatially rooted, ecologically aware, and politically engaged. These would also help raise and engage with wider political claims around urban citizenship and the right to the city, as David Harvey, Colin McFarlane, and several others have convincingly argued for. Thank you very much, and I look forward to discussion.
Thank you for that. Questions? There's one there. Yeah. Do also introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Ian Cook. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I have a question. You mentioned that there was the possibility for some cross or maybe like class-based cross-class solidarities at the transfer places, but you sort of hinted at it. And I wanted to know a little bit more about what that meant in actuality, especially as in the next slide you spoke about actually the tensions that were there between the different groups who are accessing the waste. So I'm wondering what was going on there. And if I'm allowed to cheekily ask a second question, you also mentioned something about the smallness of the city and how this has been like ignored very often in urban studies. And I'm wondering whether is there something particular about the relative smallness of Patna that feeds into your analysis when compared to, mainstream urban studies that deals with waste in larger urban centres? Thanks so much.
My question is specific to segregation of waste at source, and also I do a little bit of work in waste management, and one of the things that I've seen is that it's 80% of the total waste weight by category. 80% is wet waste, and 20% is generally plastic and other waste, right? So, what is the strategy that you could build and also assist various government organizations to recycle this wet waste at source? Okay, if we completely take this 80% of waste from the waste, right, okay, which goes to the transfer station or anywhere, I think most of these problems that we have, okay, get solved. So, what do you think about that?
My mic's not on. It's great that Musahar do not take this job as dirty and how they own the sector, but non-Musahars are a bit vulnerable right now. Do they form any labor union for their rights?
Thank you for the wonderful question. So the first question on cross-caste and cross-class solidarity. So actually, historically, the independent waste workers have always sold their materials to the local scrap shops. And by doing that, they have built strong relationship with the scrap shop owners. And they often share patron-client relationship in a way that these workers have given up on the state. They have lost all the hopes that anything is going to be done to them. And these scrap shops owners are actually helping them in times of need and emergency. So if they are monsoon seasons and they cannot work outside, they go to these shops to borrow money. If they have family marriages, they do that. If they have illnesses, they do that. And they kind of repay that loan by selling their materials to those scrap shops. So it's very much, if you see patron client, but also if you see how the workers at Pani Tanki transfer station actually negotiated with the agency by saying that it's not us, but it's actually them who depend on us. If we do not sell our materials to these scrap shops, what will happen to them? So these are very grounded solidarity, which is very unique for me to understand, because I could see that there are hierarchies within that as well, because the scrap shop owners are higher caste or other backward castes and Muslims, but that provided me with a unique avenue. For example, if the state or if the agency is trying to push them harder, then they could build a strong group and resist that. And the second follow-up question was about the tensions among Dalits and non-Dalits. This has happened with the transfer station becoming the only working sites. Earlier, there were several dumping grounds, and people, based on their convenience, they used to roam around the city and work. But now these different kinds of people, different kinds of communities are coming together at one space, and that has led to both kind of assertion that you see even upper caste workers are working in the waste sector. It is no more stigmatized work. Even upper castes are coming to this. It is mostly income and necessity driven work. If they do not have any work, how will they feed their family? So they are coming back to it. But when the Dalit subcastes who are hierarchically below the Musahars, when they see them, they feel like, oh, their job is to clean toilets and sewers. Why are they coming and taking our jobs, which have been historically ours? So this very unique dilemma. I don't know how to put it, but there are certainly tensions. And Patna specifically, because Patna is a useful site to understand transitions, because in a lot of different cities that transitions have already happened, but Patna is still, the infrastructures are not fully in place, and the smallness, Patna is not that small. We were having this conversation earlier, but Patna is a very difficult place to research, and because of that, a lot of researchers opt out. I have seen them not doing research. No one is willing to talk to you with the municipal officials or NGOs or workers. I hope that answered your question. For the second question on source segregation, PMC along with other organizations, be it civil society organizations or even GIZ, German International Development Aid Agency, they have several programs in households where they distribute 2 separate dustbins for dry and wet waste for segregation. And they do this awareness campaigns by going along with the municipal workers when they go to collect from the source. And they try to create awareness that, when you dump wet waste into dry waste, it's really difficult to segregate and manage it. You're right when you say that the farther the waste goes, the more problem it creates because of transportation and all those additional burdens it brings. The solutions that a lot of key informants and I was trying to engage with was localized, decentralized system of compost pits, be it in residential housing or at a ward scale. But again, it creates a lot of issues because who is going to have the ownership of that place, who is going to have ownership of the waste itself. And people complain about the civic sense. Biharis, they don't understand anything. So a lot of putting blame on the household itself. And in a lot of households where the segregation happens, it's actually the domestic workers who do that, and they are not actually informed in a way that how to segregate, etc. So that communication gap is there. I hope that answered your question. And third, on the non-Musahir, sorry, what was that about?
Form any labor union for the guys?
No, they don't have. I thought if they have labor unions, it will be easier for me to, access them, but they don't have. There are certain labor unions for the municipal workers in Patna. It's a good big 8,000 sanitation workers union, and they handle the issues around contractualization and not timely payment from the municipality or the agency. But for independent waste workers, there's no union there up to. They're just out there very precariously, so they have to fight their battles alone, unfortunately. And these identity-based or profession-based or place-based solidarity or whatever organizing they could do, they have done that, but that has also been very temporal in nature.
Okay, so we move on. Thanks very much for that, Rahul. And we then move on to the last paper. We're not doing too badly on time. We're okay, right? Okay. So the last paper is by Satarupa Karmarkar from University of Queensland and an Institute of Technology. The title of the paper is Organic, Not Anomaly, How Slums Build Resilience to Fire in a Changing City. Hi, over to you. Please stick to the time so
Hello.
that you can field some questions. Yeah.
I will just start sharing screen. Hi, I'm Shatarupa. I'm a PhD student in University of Queensland-IIT Delhi Joint Academy of Research. So today I will be presenting a part of my PhD project, like broader research that I'm working on. And this is basically the preliminary data analysis that we have done on some of the data I collected from the slums in Delhi. So the theme of the conference today is urban transition, and I have tried to situate my topic within the broader paradigm of transition. So I'm not going to discuss a lot. I know we are short in time. So like when we're talking about transition within the cities, one particular outcome, or maybe we can say the manifestation of that, is the formation of slums. Now, slums, we are considering slum as a dynamic space which is shifting in the way and shifting and also staying same within the changing city itself. And we here want to look into the bottom up perspectives from the household level, because these also impact the city level resilience and the city level transformation as a whole. Here we are looking particularly to disaster resilience and focusing on fire, because there are a lot of fire incidents which are happening in the global south, especially in the informal settlements. But in India, if we see, there are very less research on fire resilience, or say fire incidents in the slums. So today my research question is, how do slum households build disaster resilience through the multifaceted interaction of different factors which are present there? So here I'm trying to situate my study, contextualize my study in the long established narrative of urban inquiry. And here I will be looking into the everyday practices, the localized strategies that the communities, the people there, they adapt to to increase their resilience, or maybe just to respond to fire, and also to respond to the adversities in a daily life. Now, this is basically, I'm trying to set the context. And I don't know why this is not going away. Anyway, so I'm trying to set the context of my research here. So here first, I'm looking into the broader paradigm of informality, which is also considered as a new urban order. Some say it's a state of exception. We are saying that in global south, we see a phase of contradictory urbanism. There is so much contradiction. There are so many like there are disparities, there are inequalities, and at the same time people are trying to eradicate slum, but at the same time they are also trying to integrate that within the within city planning in a way that they are talking about slum like policies of resettlement and rehabilitation. And also there is this undergoing this underlying anxiety which works, and that actually leads to certain power struggle, because the people who are staying there in slums, they don't have the agency in their hand. But when and why I say this power struggle, because we can see, like, if there are people are being shifted to resettlement colonies which are far away from the center of the city, sometimes they actually tend to come back to the city again. So that is the sense of power struggle that is continuously working between the authority, the urban authority, and the people who are staying there. And in this way, we are trying to look into resilience as a nested connection. It has an interconnection with risk and survival. Why so? Because, for example, the things that they're doing on the daily lives to survive. For example, if they're trying to get some illegal electricity connection, they are extending the wire from the pole, but that can also increase fire risk. So now that is a mode of survival for them, but that is also increasing fire risk for them. So it is all in some sort of interconnection, and it is nested between one and another. Um, okay, so my research is particularly located in Delhi, the slums of Delhi, and here I have looked into the Joggi clusters and also the resettlement colonies. Through multi-stage cluster sampling, I have taken 3 criteria: the history of fire incidents, district-wide location of the clusters, and also the household density. So we have taken 31 sample sites. And after collecting data, so we have done surveys and interviews. Here I am including the data collected only through surveys. And the analysis has been done. We have used structural equation modeling. We have coded the responses that we got. And after that, we have used the seminar package in R to run this model. So before I go into the analysis, this is basically the definitions that I have used for Jubi clusters and resettlement colonies. So these are the definitions that we have adopted. And also the map shows the location of the 675 JJ clusters in Delhi. The map does not include the location of the resettlement colonies, only the JJ clusters. So we have 3 resettlement colonies and 28 JJ clusters, and a total of 250 responses we have got. So after cleaning and sorting after removing the duplicate responses and all the incomplete responses, this is based on the DUCIF data, which is from 2019. So also for our study, we have hypothesized certain relationship within the variables that we used. So the list basically shows the variables and the impact on household resilience and also the direction of the impact. So we have hypothesized that the variables have a certain positive impact on household resilience, except the variable which is children and old. So basically the number of children and old member, which is more than 65 years old within the household. Why we are saying this negative? Because based on the previous literature, it has been hypothesized that if there are children or old members in the household, it might delay the evacuation time, which is very critical when there is a fire. This is the conceptual framework. So because we are using structural equation modeling, we have this leverage that we can also introduce some sort of mediation impact, a mediation effect of between certain variables. For example, sense of place and social support. So sense of place does have a direct impact on household resilience, but it can also have an indirect impact through social support on household resilience. So I have introduced several mediation effects within my model that actually gives the nuanced understanding of how this thing actually works. So we have run the model, and this is the result. So here we can, so the green ones are basically the paths which are statistically significant, and the value ideally should be between -1 to +1, which shows like how strong or weak that is. And also we have also tested the statistical significance here. So some parts are statistically significant, the green ones, and some parts have shown the how we have devised the hypothesis, but some of the parts, some relations are not. For example, if we talk about housing condition, we hypothesized that housing condition has a positive impact on housing resilience, which means like better the condition, like better is the ventilation, better are the materials. For example, non using any flammable material, it has a positive impact on housing resilience. But here we are seeing that it has a negative. So why it can be? Number one is we don't have enough responses for all the items that we used, so that can be one reason. Another reason can be the how we have operationalized the variables there. It is basically it depended a lot on the previous studies, but the previous studies in disaster, they are not always depend on fire, they can be on any disaster. But it should be also kept in mind, like the nature of fire as a disaster and the nature of other disaster is not always same. So that can also be a reason that the result actually worked the other way than our hypothesis. Also, our model shows like there is a 29% variance in housing resilience, which is in total caused by the other the all the constructs that we have used. So basically, I'm showing here in like in the model which were the statistically significant parts. I will just talk about a few of them. For example, previous experience that has the highest path coefficient, which is almost 46, close to 50% actually. So this is aligning very strongly with the existing literature. And I also want to highlight some of the field inferences. For example, when I was talking to people, I was interviewing them, I was conducting my surveys. So I have found that after a fire, people are getting more they are more aware of what to do. So I was saying that social support does have a positive impact on household resilience, and how we conceptualize social support as a way that like how people are able to or ask for support, or how likely they are to receive support from anyone, from the neighbor. So that does have some impact on the on household resilience. And also I was talking about sense of place, like that has some mediating impact through social support on household resilience, because social support and sense of place in a way are very interconnected. Like the longer I'm staying in some place, the more willing I will be to ask for assistance when there is a need. And the one positive thing that I noticed in the field is like in slums, it is a very common thing to have, of course, like there is lack of resources, so there are also some fights over resources. So for example, water, like water supply is not regular there, sometimes we'll actually fight over water, like so if the water is supplied from outside, like DJB, like Delhi Jal Board sends tank trucks for water tankers. So sometimes there is a fight, but when there is a fire, because that is emergency, so they will help each other. And that may not be always limited to if the person is staying for long or not, but that the fact that the who's like the person in whose house or maybe whose property the fire has started, so that person will be more willing to ask if he knows the place, if he knows the people around him, because then there is the sense of belonging, the sense of familiarity that grows. And lastly, I just wanted to say that because there is not a very high policy focus right now, particularly to fire resilience or disaster resilience in slums. So so we will try to recommend, like, because this is not the final work that I'm doing, this is just preliminary analysis, but we would just want to conclude that there should be some tailored policies which are catering to them, because their needs and their way of perceiving resilience is not very similar to the other part of the city. I'm not saying that we should alienate them, but at least trying to incorporate them within the policy can be a good thing to do. Also, we do call for future research to explore urban disaster resilience in the global south, particularly in slums. If I talk about fire, because I work on fire, so if I talk about fire, there is a multiple works on fire incidents in slums, fire response in the informal settlements in, say, Africa or South America. But when we come to India, there is so less work we talk about. So I mean, I also personally face so many problems when looking into literature and stuff. So I think it will be really good if we include more works on this, and also we acknowledge the role of slums in the broader sense of urban transition. So yeah, that's all. I should wrap up my work now. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, and we are sorry that there was a tech this thing. Thank you. We are now open to questions. There's one there, yeah, and there's one here. Any more questions from the audience?
Thanks for that presentation. It was really interesting. Like one question I'm interested to understand from you is that
did you have a chance to explore the tenure precarity situation for these JJCs? And I'm curious to know how that relates to the experience of firstly why the fire also happens, and also the experience um, of then what kind of mechanisms the community is able to access. Anecdotally, through some field, on field, I've always heard of like fires because of gas cylinders, but I've also heard of fires because because it is a precarious settlement, and this understanding that authorities sometimes use fires also to start an eviction. So I'm curious to know if that was something that came up in your field experience. Yeah, thanks.
So we'll collect a couple of questions and then we'll hand it over to you. So no, there were, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, did you collect the quantitative data to see the perceived threat of the slum dwellers for fire? Like it's there in literature or any quantitative survey that you do? Yeah, this one is like.
Yeah, sure.
This is a slightly different question. I saw a television program in which three-wheelers from India were being assembled in South Africa. And one of the uses was as very small fire engines. So these are the kind of things that could be used in slums. And I wondered if there's been any experience of that outside South Africa, in India, for example.
Okay, over to you.
So yeah, I have got the data for tenure and the tenure aspects, but like of course I couldn't include everything in the slides, but I just want to highlight that regarding tenure, because if they don't have a formal tenure, unless if they are staying in resettlement colonies, if those are just like slums, and then they know that they will be evicted someday, so there is a high chance that they won't invest in improving the housing condition. For example, many houses, if like I think all of us know like how they look like and the structures of housing there. I have seen a lot of usage like flammable materials, say for example tarpaulins or plastic sheets used as walls, and those have higher tendency to catch fire, and also fire spreads very fast if we are using those type of materials. But I have asked them, and even if they are staying for long years, but since there is always a chance of eviction, so there is a high tendency among them that they won't change the structure because they know that they are investing money for nothing. They will have to get evicted, and because fire is never predictable, so nobody knows when fire will occur. So their mentality is more like when it will happen we will see, but just for that we can't spend a lot of money because we have other things to pay money for, which we have to also spend money. Secondly, design of fire, yes, mostly you are right. It is a lot of because of the electricity connection, or maybe they didn't turn off the gas properly and stuff like that. But eviction, honestly, the large scale fire incidents that I have heard about, it was like, at least the data that I got, people that I spoke to, it was large scale fire incidents. It was never caused by eviction is drive. One thing I just want to highlight, it was it was not a, it used to be a slum near Buland Masjid. Um, and I'm just forgetting the locality name, but the fire was there in 2023. It was a very large fire, and I actually visited the place after the fire, but the entire fire just burned away. And it was just few people who are staying as homeless families who got displaced because of fire. Most of them got shift, like they just went away to here and there, but few families were staying there. And even though I don't know if it was a eviction drive or not, but like, of course, I was not there when the fire started. But when I was talking to them, like I got I got some responses which were saying, okay, we can't tell the police to, or we can't again set down houses here because they will again throw us out. They want to throw us out. That is why they set the fire. So I am assuming, of course, and also because there are a lot of incidents reported in newspaper, I am assuming it was also partly maybe because of that. But since like I cannot like say 100% by confidence, but I'm guessing like, yeah, I have come across one incident like that. Um, And also, I don't remember the second question. That was mechanism for something, but I honestly didn't understand mechanism for what. So maybe we can come back to that later. Third one was the use of small engine in South Africa. Yeah, in India also we have certain like this is from my interviews with the Delhi fire service officials. So in India also they have motorbikes like like water tankers installed in motorbikes. So that can actually go inside the narrow lanes which are there in slums. But in reality, honestly, that takes sometimes a lot of time, which can actually lead to more casualties and more negative impact of fire that no one wants. But because sometimes what they do is they just extend pipes from the fire tender inside the alleys. But again, if the further the house is from the main road, the more time it will actually take to for the fire to be extinguished, and that actually increases the chance of causality. At least in Delhi, I know there are not like small engines, but they do have fire tenders and they do have motorbikes. That is the answer to my third question. And the second question, I honestly didn't get it. Like, what do you mean by mechanisms?
I think it's okay. Sorry about that, but I'm getting signs to wrap up. So thank you for
Yeah,
that. And thanks to all presenters. A round of applause for all of them. Thank you all of you.